There we go.
Hitting the on button does help.
It helps.
Hello, and welcome to Filling in the Gaps. I'm Justin.
And I'm Darren.
And today we're going to be discussing a game called Stories Untold. Stories Untold was released in 2017, February 28th. It is from the developer No Code, and it was apparently originally a hit episode, as they call it, called The House Abandoned, but I didn't play that. I'm pretty sure that I got this game in a bundle of some kind, and got it because it was recommended by, I think, Extra Credits at some point. And it just seemed so different that I was ready to kind of jump in. At the time that I played it, it was also October, so I was in the mood for something creepy, and apparently it was supposed to be creepy. So this is kind of where I wanted to jump in. It is a game in kind of 4 parts. Each one feels a little bit different. It's its own thing. It's kind of tricky to talk about without giving spoilers, but I do think that it is quite an interesting game. It's a relatively cheap game as well, even at base price. It's only about $10, but it can go on sale for up to 75% off. So it's at $250. It's definitely worth it. How long did it take you to beat the game?
I think I did it was almost like an hour per chapter for me, something along those lines. Maybe a little bit less for the last chapter. But it was about a 3 or 4 hour game.
I would say anything like $5, I would say it's probably worth it.
Oh yeah, if you can get it for $5, that's a good price for this. Kind of, I'd say it's a puzzle-solving, text-based adventure with some first-person aspects thrown in, and a kind of creepy overall. I wouldn't go as far as say it's a horror story, but I mean they're billing it as a horror, aren't they? I mean that's their tagline, isn't it?
I think that certainly Chapter 1 could fit that.
Chapter 1 scared the pants off me, actually.
So I would say it can. I suppose that it could fit that, but I think it's much more the fact that each story is its kind of own story, and I would say that they are trying to go for horror for all of them, I think, at least in slight, but can't really talk about that now without giving things away. So, but it's not the kind of typical jump scare horror that we see a lot of now. It's much more creepy, atmospheric horror, which we both prefer, and is about the only kind of scary movie, scary game kind of thing that you do anymore.
Yeah, it's got like a creeping kind of tension to it that is, yeah, I like that a lot about this game.
It is definitely something that to me felt very unique. You pointed out the fact that there is a game called 321, which is similar to this. I would not say it's the same. You were kind of saying, oh, it's the same. It's very similar to this. That one is free and worth trying, but it is a very frustrating game. This one doesn't feel so frustrating. This one feels very easy to work with.
It's polished, for sure.
And it also feels very... I think part of the reason that the atmosphere works so well in this game is that it is a very immersive environment that you get thrown into. About the only way to make it any more immersive would be to have it in VR. And even then, I'm not sure how well that would work, but that's just because I don't have a VR set. I haven't used it. But it feels very immersive to be touching the things kind of, even just through the keyboard and mouse and the way that it works, feels like I'm there. And it does that better than most games, to be honest. There are some minor puzzles, but it's not an overly complicated puzzle game. Would you agree with that? Or
The game itself has even put in a disclaimer. We talked and kind of joked about how they're trying to describe to young people what a text-based adventure game is, and they're like, but you might not know the right commands. That's part of the fun, you know. they're trying to package it like, this is how we had fun in the Stone Age. But yeah, I can see it being maybe a little bit odd, and for people who have never ever even seen these kinds of games. I grew up playing these games when I was a kid. The Hobbit, the Pawn is another great one. There's so many of these text-based adventures. Even things like King's Quest were text-based to some degree.
all things I didn't play. My text-based experience was typically Fahrenheit 451,
Yep.
Carmen Sandiego,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe just some random others that I was able to play at a friend's house, but typically I missed out on this whole era of games.
I think as well it was maybe more of a European or UK kind of phenomenon, because in the States you guys all had Nintendos and stuff and consoles. I grew up with in fact in this game, in chapter 1, the computer that you're playing on is an exact replica. It's got a different name, but it's the exact same computer that I had.
Yeah, see, I had something like it, but it was not nearly so powerful, and it was kind of a pain to work with.
Yeah, because mine was a Spectrum 48K, you know, and it was like, so we didn't have a lot of processing power, and yeah, so these text-based games were fairly popular because they were A, easy to program, B, they didn't require so much memory, and so.
But you had to flip. Well, you were using a cassette, right, for yours, whereas Fahrenheit 451 I played on floppy disk, and you get to certain parts of the game, you have to flip the disc over or put in the other disc.
You got like 8 discs that come with it, yeah. But yeah, so part of this game is a little bit of a nostalgia trip, but I don't think it's a nostalgia game. I think it's a game for modern audiences that happens to have some old school stuff in, and for good reason, which we'll get to later on. Yeah, I would recommend it. It'd been on my wish list for a long time, and I just hadn't got around to buying it because I didn't want to pick it up because I didn't have time to play it yet, and my backlog is getting longer every day. So, but I'm glad I picked it up eventually. It came on sale. It came to me at a price that I couldn't refuse, pretty much. And it was like, okay, well, now's the time. And you'd actually started playing it first, and I decided, like, okay, I'll have to tag along now, do this together. And what a trip! It was a great game, short but gold.
Highly recommend it. Okay, that takes us into our spoiler section, so beware, spoilers ahead.
Go and play it. It's not a long game. It's like
you can go play it and come back later today and listen to the rest of the episode. You ready?
Chapter 1.
Spoiler section. So, listeners, I am less prepared than Darren today. I'm here with very few notes, and he's here with pages of notes. So this is another one where he's going to get to run the show.
Oh dear.
So let's, you said you wanted to go chapter by chapter, right?
I think that's a good plan.
That's fine. Yeah, let's do it. So, that's fine. I'm just, giving you permission to do it that way. Yes, so chapter 1, honestly, my favorite chapter.
Oh, really?
Yes, I think so. I think if I had played The House Abandoned and then played this, and if it's the same thing, and I got to chapter 2, I'd be, it's okay, but it's not as good. Chapter 1 is the one that just really gives me the most as far as story and immersion, and I didn't really know what was going on. So when you get in to the game, and I love the intro, the kind of
Stranger Things.
Yeah, kind of, but even more so, because it's got images and things going on. I love the look of that. I love the fact that you get into the game, and there you are with this old computer with a cassette in it, right? And the monitor that's probably just a TV. And I like that. But at first, I was really irritated because I went, well, yeah, that looks good. Haha, I'm playing on an old computer. But it only takes up half the screen or a third of the screen. I'm like, why are they taking all that monitor space away from me as the player? Couldn't we just look at the computer and then go, haha, okay, I'm playing in an old computer, and then bring the full screen up. I didn't realize what they were doing.
Right, yeah.
I thought they were being overly pushy with this imagery that they were giving me, not realizing the fact that, oh no, that's actually important. What's going on outside of this computer is going to be very, very important. And I think that that is why the first one gets me, because I had no idea what I was in for, and it totally surprised me, like a number of times.
Yeah, that creeped me out for sure, that one.
Especially when just things start happening. When...
like the alarm goes off.
Yeah. And you have to type into the computer, turn off alarm or turn on light. When you start doing things that affect the world around you.
Yeah, so creepy.
And when you say things like, open the door, and all of a sudden the door opens and you hear it.
Yeah.
And most of that is just sound effects. It's just all imagination. And that is something that I do kind of miss from that era. You had to use your imagination in order to see what was going on. And so I think that would be the other thing about this one, is just, it's so much about my own imagination. Whereas the others were a bit more, I don't want to say in your face, but they're a bit more explicit. This is what you're looking at. This is what's happening.
Yeah, so in chapter 1, that computer, I owned that very computer, and that is...
So is that a real computer? I thought they'd made up the...
They made up the name. It was called
Okay.
like a Futuro or something like that in the game. But it's an exact replica of the ZX Spectrum Plus 2, which is... There was 2 different versions of the 128K. One of them was the Plus 2, which had a tape deck, which was the one that I had. And there was the Plus 3, which had a floppy drive, which I never had. That was too fancy. Because I had all my cassettes from the 48K days. It's like, there's no way I'm rebuying them all. But yeah, so it was a ZX Spectrum 128 Plus 2. And that immediately was like a nostalgia bomb just detonated on the screen in front of me, which was quite nice. But again, for me, that sets up the time of when this is taking part. It brings back all those memories of the games that I used to play. And I'm very familiar of this setup. Like you said, it's not a monitor, it's a television. You would hook that up to your TV. I can understand why you're saying, like, why am I not just like in the screen? Because you guys see all the other stuff.
It's funny though that you say that, because the thing is, we're now back to that point again in technology where it's quite common to hook your computer up to your TV.
And yeah, in some cases it's even better. A lot of people are hooking their PCs up to their 4K televisions now and getting amazing results. I would say that the first game is, it's like you're playing a game, playing a character who's playing a game, who is then being controlled by that person. It's just like there's too many layers. And when I was playing this game, and this is something we're obviously going to talk about at the end, but the whole game from start to finish reminded me of an episode of Black Mirror, basically. And I don't want to get into too much detail about,
because we want to talk about.
We want to talk about that at the end, but it was like, it reminded me, like, it was more like even with the opening, like you said, it's like got this like a credit scene, like an opening movie TV show scene, and even the developer said that they put that in there for a reason, and it wasn't just to look cool. It was for the third chapter, or
fourth chapter.
Sorry, it was for the fourth chapter, so that they could. It wasn't just a. Oh no! Would that make it a gimmick?
It's basically a plot device.
Yeah,
because that's the other thing too, is that I liked it better when I thought they were all individual stories, and by the time I got to the third one, I was suspecting that they weren't, because in the second one and the third one, I think I had the same name.
Yes.
And so that kind of clued me in that something's going on. But again, we'll talk about that at the end. So you go in the first time and everything's normal and happy. And then the second time, all the descriptions are awful. Everything's run down.
Even the note in your hand that you keep on referring to changes, and the writing, it's all oily and greasy and stuff. The game, by the end of it, is you obviously know why all these, like all the references to oil and all the references to kind of blood and everything, you get that by the end of the game, like why they've been used. But that's what I like about this game. Throughout the whole thing, they've kind of not really been throwing it in your face. They've used all of these kind of devices quite subtly, I guess. And yeah, the first game, I had no idea what was going on.
You kind of did,
can I say that?
you said it reminded you of something else.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of, 321. It also reminded me a lot of Dear Esther. And that is not even remotely the same kind of game. But it's just this, there's just the feeling that I got from it. Like, the whole, like we said, like what we talked about, the whole coma plot or insane asylum plot. There's also a book called The Bridge by Ian Banks, which this game really reminded me of, which is about a guy in a coma. And this game is a mixture of both of those, I guess. He is in a coma, and then he's in a mental hospital, I guess, for being treated for depression or some kind of psychosis. I mean, I don't want to say, yeah, I knew it from the start. I kind of did. But at the same time, even though I thought I knew where the story was going, I wasn't like, oh, well, I've seen this before and done it. I was intrigued, and I wanted to go into the rabbit hole.
I was wondering how much I could do. This is one of the things with the old games, the text-based games, where you're never really sure exactly how far you can push things or what commands might magically do something. And it's one area where I do feel the game let me down a little bit, is that it was very linear and very straightforward, and there wasn't a lot of bonus funny things that I could get away with, or interesting things that I could get away with that weren't. Now, I don't have all the achievements, so maybe there are some commands I didn't try that I should have, or some things I didn't find in the game, but I really felt like I was at every turn trying to explore not the direct linear line of where the story was going, but trying to see. So when the second version, the dark version in chapter 1 happens, I was trying to go everywhere in the house that I possibly could, not just going straight up to the bedroom, which could have ended it very quickly, and I knew that's where I was supposed to go, but I wanted to see what was going on in the rest of the house. I wanted to see if there was something else, like a secret that I hadn't seen before that now I could, which you do get to in the 4th chapter, but it's pretty in your face at that point.
Yeah, the 4th chapter, I was running around. Like, in the first chapter...
Yeah, and so I think it's the 4th chapter that annoys me the most with that, because I was really trying to do something different, and you couldn't.
Yeah, in the first chapter, I just kind of was... I just went with the flow and was like, what would I do normally? I didn't want to try and break the game, basically. I just wanted to just go ahead and let's see, okay, I know what you want me to do, and it's creeping me out. I want to keep that suspense going, so I don't want to break that and be like, oh, go on to check out the bathroom. Like, no.
Obviously, I did. I was like, what else is here?
No, I was like, okay, go up the stairs. Oh, I can hear the breathing. He's right behind me and stuff, you know? But by the 4th chapter, and that, yeah, again, that's the worst chapter of the game for me. It really fell flat, but it didn't fall flat so bad that it ruined the whole experience, but by the 4th chapter, I was trying everything to no avail.
So let's kind of shelve that now, because we're both, I think, chomping at the bit to take down the 4th chapter. But let's look at chapter 2. So chapter 2
is called The Experiment, or at least that's what I've named it.
It was a very
I love chapter
odd
2.
feeling at first, because now you're not just with the monitor, you have to go over to the side and read the instructions. And I did find chapter 2 to be a little frustrating at times. One of those was the fact that you couldn't have superfluous equipment running.
Yeah. So
if you accidentally had something else running that wasn't supposed to, then you would think you'd done everything right, but it wasn't always obvious when something else was running too. Sometimes the monitor, knowing which kind of spectrum to have it lined up for, didn't seem like that was very clear. But these were minor kind of problems that were easily overcome. I mean, I did get through it rather quickly. But the biggest problem I would have, and I don't know if this was me playing and I had a glitch, or if this was you as well, right at the end of the chapter, when we have to input a code that's not written in English, which is written
flashing symbols.
The flashing symbols, for mine, they were so close to the screen and moving so quickly that I just found them virtually impossible to see.
Yeah.
Did you have that problem as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there were, and even parts of them were cut off. I think it's supposed to be. I mean, I like that. I like things like that in games.
I like the idea of it. I just would have liked if it wasn't so. I don't know. It felt like it was difficult just for the sake of being difficult, when they could have slowed it down a little bit. That's fine. If it has to run through the cycle and I have to pay attention, that's fine. But the speed at which they did it, and the fact that I couldn't see the whole symbol, just, I think at the beginning there's an epilepsy warning, and I think it must have been for that scene. And after a while, like, I just started to feel like I was getting a headache, and I'm like, I'm done. I did go through and find a walkthrough for that. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's just irritating me to try and do it. It's not an interesting puzzle. You know, I think that's where, like, if it was an interesting puzzle and it was a challenge because I had to mentally figure it out. But no, it's just more kind of a reaction puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, for that, all you have to do is just focus on one, because you've got four quadrants, I guess, and you cannot look at all of them and be like, okay, that's what they all are. Like, that would be impossible unless you were a Rain Man. But yeah, you choose your quarry and you look for that symbol, that one symbol, and you're like, right, this is the one that I'm looking for. I need to find that, and you focus on that corner until you get it. Then once you put that in, then you choose the next one. And I liked it because it's like, imagine those symbols. Those symbols are basically, you're being talked to telepathically by this, GLaDOS core. And yeah, it's just in your mind's eye. It's just like these flashing, crazy images. So it's like, yeah, I like that puzzle. The second chapter for me was better than the first chapter. The third chapter was the best for me.
See, I think for atmosphere, the first one by far gets me every time. The second one, I don't know, I kind of like going through the steps.
I like the mystery behind it all, like, because
we didn't know what was going on. Then we see at one point you get a heart started, and you get to see that on the monitor.
Yeah, then it explodes.
And then it says, "Oh, now you need to drill a hole in it." Yeah. And, like, you make it alive, and then start up the drill. I think like that's a
you use sonic waves, and then you push the heart too far, and the heart explodes, and then you're like, okay, now we need to drill the casing of what's inside the heart. You don't drill the beating heart. You explode the heart first. But I liked all that stuff, and like that level reminded me. The reason I loved that level is because it was straight out of Myst. It was a complex, overly complex machine that you had to work out how to operate, and that's my jam. I love that stuff. So like, yeah, things that are just beyond your comprehension, you don't know what they do. It was like science from like the old kind of. It was almost like that level could have been a Mystery Science Theater episode. You know, it's like inserting the breakfast pastry. You know, it was just nonsense, absolute nonsense science.
But I love getting the orb to come out, because I hadn't expected that. I'd seen a heart, so I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
It came out, doing the text-based adventure from that point on through the memories of what it saw and kind of realizing what's going on.
It's an alien invasion. Well, that's what I took away from it. Is
yeah, and then at the end, the thing is, the humans have captured them and hurt them, and not realize that it's a kind of hive mind mentality. Because there's a point where you're saying, oh, you walk in and you see it hurting you, and they're like, we didn't hurt it. How does it know this? And because they're not thinking of it as an entity that shares all its like minds. And so once we release it, then they all come to attack, right?
Yeah, because you're like the controller as well. It's like that's great in the text-based one. You're like, what's this? This one's woken up, like, and you're like, okay, get out of bed. And like, he's getting out, he's moving, and like, exit, like, he's leaving the war. And it's like, oh wow, I'm controlling everyone. It's like that was awesome. Such a good kind of little twist to that part of the chapter. The problem I had with all the text-based stuff, and you've touched on this already, is for a modern game, yeah, I get that you wanted to keep it authentic, but you're also putting in kind of caveats and disclaimers of how a text-based game should be played for a modern audience. But yet, you didn't upgrade anything or update anything. It's like, it's still like, why doesn't unlock door work but use key does? And I found that with the second text-based game in this one, where it was like, you see a silhouette of a figure. It's like, talk to figure, no. Talk to man, no. Talk to person, no. You've actually got to type in talk to silhouette. Like, I mean, really, could you not have just put the extra effort in to like make it a little bit easier? Like, I do remember how you had to be pinpoint accuracy with your text-based commands, but it is 2016. Could we not upgrade this a little bit to have a room for a little kind of margin of error? So that would be my only gripe with the text-based parts. But yeah, the silhouette, I was stuck on that silhouette for ages. Like, it felt like ages. It was 10 minutes maybe, but I just couldn't talk to that. I knew what I had to do, but eventually, and I think I spelled silhouette wrong the first time, so I skipped on that the next time.
So that's what we need, is a spell checker.
Spell checker, yeah. Part 2 was awesome, but part 3 for me was my favorite.
I really like part 3. So part 3 is where you're in some sort of really cold...
You're in Greenland.
Greenland, okay.
Yeah.
And you have a monitor with a kind of receiver attached to it. And then off to the left, which is beautiful, is a microfiche machine, right? And I love that because this is one of those things that I remember people using, but by the time I would have ever needed to use them, internet. It's so much easier. But using it felt very intuitive and very natural once you realized what all the buttons and levers did.
Which I did not.
I just went, what does this one do? Now, the turning it was not the best control.
It worked fine on keyboard. When I did that, I had no problems on keyboard and mouse. It must have been a controller issue.
No, I don't think you could use controller in this game.
Oh, did you have to use keyboard and mouse for this? Ah, okay. I didn't have any issues with you mean with like spinning it?
Yeah, because it seemed to spin it really fast.
Ah.
And so sometimes that was a bit tricky to get it back to where I wanted it again. But the zooming in and then the focus and then the little lever that could move it around the screen as you needed to, I like that. It just felt so real. And it worked so well. I love that manual. You have to flip through so many pages of code and do what it says. And then there's the appendices at the back, which do other things. So you had to deal with Morse code at one point. You had to deal with a flow chart at one point.
Yeah.
And just the idea of grabbing these frequencies to find the message and then using that to kind of follow the code. It's not overly difficult, but it felt real.
Yeah, I was going to say real is the word you're looking for there. It was laborious, but it wasn't boring. And yeah, it just felt real to me. I loved that level. I loved it.
As I said, even in the game, I think one of the people you were talking to says, anybody can do it, you just need to follow the manual. So you need the manual. And it's true. So like you said, it's not a difficult puzzle, but it feels like you're actually doing something. It still feels challenging in the fact that you have to go find it. You have to put the pieces together. And they did a really good job of going from an easier one to harder ones where you have to go back to the original like code that you put in, and you have to put in like the last number from that code, or
type in the variables like x equals this, y equals this.
But where this one really shocked me was getting to leave the room.
Yeah, goes full first person.
Because all of a sudden, in the first 2 chapters, you're stuck there. You are going nowhere. And then all of a sudden, I'm walking on this snowy path And was this before or after creatures started jumping on the roof?
It was directly after. Yeah.
So I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, if I was going to see something, if I was going to get attacked. I had no idea.
Like this level kind of worried me as well because I just recently played Conarium, and that's a lot of that is set in like an Arctic station, and it's kind of Cthulhu monster story, I guess. And so I was just waiting to get jumped by some crazy tentacled monster. But yeah, when that thing landed on the roof, I jumped out of my chair and I said, "Oh no, now they want me to go outside." Of course, thanks, guys. But yeah, there's nothing happens. You go and switch on a generator, and that's it. But like you said, this is a giveaway because your character from the experiment room is called Asian.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
In this, they talk to you and your name is Asian. It's like, wow, so I was doing that and now I'm stationed in the Arctic. I must have done something really bad.
It's where I started to go mentally wondering, why did they do that? That must be on purpose. But I still had no idea what was going on at this point.
With this, the whole chapter, I think I texted you about this as well, and I said, I really wish they could make like a kind of Black Watchman type puzzle game like this, that mixes first person elements where you move around from A to B. Because let's face it, this was pretty much I'm not going to say it was a Black Watchman puzzle, but it was that style of puzzles where you had to use ciphers and books and basically looking. If they didn't have the manual, you'd be looking it up on Wikipedia. To have like a self-contained bubble where you've got all the information you need, but you also get to walk around and move around. That would be a really cool puzzle game. I think they could build an entire game off of level 3. And maybe it wouldn't be for everyone, but I would certainly buy it,
I think I would enjoy it more than I did Black Watchman. I think part of the problem I have with Black Watchman was that we had to keep going out of the game, and it kept ruining the immersion. This game didn't do that. This game, everything is right there at your fingertips.
And you've got aliens jumping on the roof, you've got all the drama, all the suspense. Yeah, and it's all contained. It's all self-contained. Yeah.
You don't have that ridiculous voice actor.
Dokes. But yeah, great level, and yeah, very cool.
I think I just loved it for how, again, real it felt. Like, it just felt like being stuck in this research area, and I enjoyed that. But I think for me, I was wondering if this still had to do with the aliens from the second one. When I had the same name, that made me think that the aliens had attacked, and this is kind of the last bastion of hope for some reason, that we're out here. It's too cold for them to survive here, or something along those lines. So I was a bit disappointed when we get to chapter 4.
Yeah, chapter 4 for me, it's the weakest. Like I said, it's not going to ruin the entire game for me, but I wish they'd done something else.
So, chapter 4, in case there are people who played it a long time ago, haven't played it again in a while. Chapter 4 is essentially walking into, we're in a hotel, right? Or no, we're in a hospital.
Well, how does it start, though? That's what we were talking about before. So we get the intro scene.
So we get the intro scene, but beautifully, this I will give them, beautifully, the opening credits are interrupted. Yeah. They're kind of paused, and we are pulled out of it. We're in a hospital, and we are a patient.
Yeah, it's like, you watch too much of that show.
And they say, oh, you really need to talk. You need to open up, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, I've been through some sort of trauma. I didn't know at this point exactly what I had done. I think you could start to suspect if you remember what happened before. I did try to space my play out a little bit. I think if you played it straight through, it'd be even more obvious. But they really screwed it up for me when I like the concept of going back through the previous chapters and their mechanics and having that kind of relate to the story. I don't really think this story is unique enough to really make me like it, but I like that concept. There's a better concept, though, which we'll discuss at the end. But I did like that, but they should not have gone to 3 first, because in 3, what you have to do first is look at a police report which gives you the whole story. It tells you exactly everything that's happened.
Oh, that's right, because they put you back into the Arctic station again, don't they?
And in the report, it says, oh, there was a drunken driver, and there was a sister who was killed, and like there's all this stuff. And some of this stuff is flat out, you need the answers in order to move on in the game, in order to progress. And I forget, what was the audio that we got at that point? Do you remember? When you put in the code, is it a police report or is it the doctor trying to talk to us?
I don't remember, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, see, I don't remember either. We basically get all the information. So then for the rest of chapter 4, I just feel like I'm going through the motions. I'm not really happy going through the motions at this point. In particular, when we get to chapter 1 again, and I'm trying to do everything to stop the terrible thing from happening, but you can't. And this is when you were playing, you were sending me messages, pretty much saying that same thing. You were trying to break the game in some way or do something different, but it won't let you. So,
and I don't like that kind of protagonist. It's like, I don't want to be the bad guy. Stop! Don't make me be the bad guy. That's what Telltale games are for.
well, were.
By
the time this comes out, it may be okay timing for that. But I don't like that. I particularly don't like a lot of times books that are written in first person if they are recollections. Because the thing is, if it's a recollection of something that has already happened and they're in danger, well, we know they're going to make it out. This is a big problem for me with the Walking Dead television series, that they do this a lot, where they will start at the beginning of an episode some point in the future, and then you go back. But you know whoever you saw at the beginning is going to live. So there's no kind of feeling of tension there.
Yeah, you're just waiting to see how does it play out that way.
And that's pretty much this one. I could have just gone straight through. I could have done it very quickly, but I wanted to see if there was something more. And in this game, there really isn't, at least not from what I found. So any sort of exploration at this point, any sort of trying to deviate from the main story, is mostly just met with, you can't do that. And it doesn't feel fun anymore.
And the thing is, it offers you, but it does offer you opportunities. Like, you meet your mother, she's got a huge jug of coffee. It's like, yes, drink the coffee. Don't get into the car after you've drank a bottle of whiskey. At least drink some coffee. But you don't want the coffee. It's like, well, give the keys to your sister. No, you're going to drive.
Oh, eat some of the food. Oh, no, the food has been picked to the bone. All of a sudden, when, like, the previous scene, it said, oh, nobody's touched the food.
Go to your room. You let us go upstairs last time. Why can't we go up to our beds this time? Go to the bathroom, splash water in your face.
No, your sister's waiting.
No, your sister's waiting to die.
Yeah, she can wait.
And the thing is, even with this game, this is one thing, if they did want to keep it authentic, they missed this opportunity, is because I wrote down a lot of expletives in this part, like, but it just like, I don't understand what that means. It's like, well, in 1980, you did. Like, you're like, that's a rude word. How could you say that to me? But yeah, it's like, I really don't like that. It's like, in Fallout, I never have a bad character. I could never play a bad character in Mass Effect. And now you're forcing me to play a bad character. Did they really have to have the main character as a drunk driver? Like, could we not just have the trauma in some other way? Or could we not just be in a coma trying to find our way back to reality, and this is a bunch of sessions, like, to find our way through the labyrinth of our brains? Like, why did you have to make me to be such an asshole? Like, bleep that out. But really, that's what it is. It's like, I don't want to be an asshole.
But we as a character in this game, we're turned into that because the parents seem utterly shocked that we made it into college, I think.
Yeah.
And, oh, you finally not messed up for once in your life, and then have to immediately mess up again. I don't know, this is a story that just feels like it's been overdone at this point. It's used a lot, and when you give us all the answers, when you give us all the story at the beginning, then it just kind of ruins it. So, I would say, I absolutely love chapters 1, 2, 3. Chapter 4, I'm not sure if I ever even really want to play it again.
I'd play chapters 1, 2, and 3 again.
So let's talk about what we would rather see. Because we both enjoyed it. We both thought this is a really good game. We both referenced this feels a bit like Black Mirror. But that led us to kind of a realization of a game that we would like to see.
Yeah, so it was when you're like typing that into the computer, it's like, just say it's your fault, and then yeah, I get it. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy, but I love watching episodes of Black Mirror where they're often really, really, really grey areas, and sometimes the person that you're actually trying to support turns out to be the bad guy, or the good guys just lose. And it's like, that's dark and gritty, and I can watch that, just don't make me play that. But maybe there is a market for that, because yeah, it's like, why are we not making games like this for adults who watch like all these shows now that we have, like Black Mirror, even things like the Twilight Zone and things like that. There has to be a market for this kind of game.
And I would take it just a step further to say that what I really like is the idea that, for me, if they hadn't done Chapter 4, they could have come back in with more stories.
Sure.
That were totally separate, and it could have been just an ongoing series. Stories Untold. Season 1, this is Season 1. Episode 1, 2, 3 would have been great as a Season 1. And they're all individual, and they don't have to be connected. Most of Black Mirror doesn't really have to be connected if you don't want it to be. And I like that. I like that so much better, I think, than often getting these chapter games where you maybe buy one chapter at a time, or like me, always wait until all the chapters are out and are old enough to go on sale. But oftentimes, their one chapter doesn't feel like enough, and I would be just really irritated waiting.
Yeah, because that's the caveat when you buy it. It's like, here's the cliffhanger for episode 2, and then you're waiting 3 or 4 months for episode 2. So now you gotta, when episode 2 comes out, you gotta play episode 1 again, and then you play episode 2, and it's like, no, this, like what we've just said about Stories Untold. It's like, yeah, episode 1, there's your story. Episode 2, different story. They're all an hour apiece. We watch TV shows that are an hour, and we're satisfied by the end of them. Why are we not doing this? It's like, Charlie Brooker is a gamer. You know, he's done game documentaries. He had a game documentary TV show kind of thing that he talked to other people. Dara O'Brien is a gamer. I don't know, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, comedian.
Yeah. Dara O'Brien is a big gamer. He's done some gaming kind of like TV shows, like about history of games and stuff.
They're popular in media, right? Yeah,
big popular people. Charlie Brooker is a huge writer. I mean, he wrote seasons 1 and 2. You know, he's a good writer and he's a gamer. It's like, come on, man, Charlie. The ball is now in your court. You need to get up and start writing for games, because that's your passion. Like, you could do some amazing stuff with this medium. And let's face it, this is what Black Mirror is all about. It's about technology.
And this is what I would like to see. I would like to see it not necessarily be connected. So they could be individual stories, and you could get clunker ones in there.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There are ones that don't quite work.
Yeah. But then it doesn't matter what you see next, because you know the next one is not any way connected to that. It's like, the next one might be great. Yeah. Why are we not doing this?
I think it's something that feels a bit untapped, and I would like to see more of. I would like to see more games that are short and complete entities in and of themselves, so that we don't have to play 40 hours to get a decent story, especially when a lot of times the gameplay is just padding the story and there's really not much story there. We get a 5-minute story, but you spend 40 hours to get the 5-minute story.
Chopping wood for 3 hours, yeah.
This is very story driven. It's very short, but after each of the first 3 chapters, I felt that I had had an experience.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm looking for. And so, yeah, I totally agree. I think more individual Black Mirror style single episode stories. I mean, you could release them like this in chunks of 3, or you could do 1 a month. This is the type of thing that I could see myself actually wanting to subscribe to, if I found a good one, if I found a good series that I wanted to follow. Why can't we have a series of games the way that
Netflix works.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's what I was thinking. It's like, I would happily pay. I mean, what's a Netflix subscription? $12 a month. Obviously, there's a huge amount of content, but I mean, let's just say they said it was $3 a month, and you paid for the year, so that's whatever that is, $36. But every month, we're going to release a title that will take you about 2 hours to complete, or maybe 3 hours to complete. And you pay for the season, and it's high quality, well written, interactive stories, like, that are all separate entities. And you're not like, so if you do, like you said, if you get one that's a clunker and you're like, oh man, that was rubbish, sure, okay, the next one is written by this person, he did this show, maybe source different writers to do different episodes, play around with it. But I even did some digging on this to have a look. It costs, one episode of Black Mirror is about $2.5 million. Yeah, that was my face as well. The entire budget for Stories Untold was $50,000. I mean,
I think you'd likely step it up a little bit. You'd get more voice actors and maybe more animation. The games might get a bit more complicated.
Sure,
right?
But I mean, if you can come out with a 4-hour game of not 4 different stories, but 4 hours, 4 1-hour stories for $50,000 from start to finish, well done. I mean, the reason that the cover art of Stories Untold is so familiar to us from Stranger Things is because it was actually made by, they actually contacted Kyle Lambert, who did the poster for Stranger Things, and they were like, we really liked your work, can you do the cover for our game? And he did. And that's probably where $49,000 of the budget went. But yeah, it's like $2.5 million for one episode of Black Mirror. They did this for $50,000. And yeah, of course they might step up their game, but for $50,000 they did a great job. And it's like, if you can make that for $50,000, like, there's got to be money to be made. So shut up and take my money. Like, that's it. There you go. Like, just, that's what the video for this episode is going to be. It's just going to be a picture of, what's the shut up and take my money guy from Futurama? Fry. This is, yeah, that's what this episode's thumbnail is going to be. It's just going to be Fry's face with a fistful of cash. Like, seriously, shut up and take my money. Come on, Charlie, get to work.
Why are you singling him out? Yes, I agree that he's very clever, and I would like to see more of a game that he wrote, but I'm sure he's quite busy.
I'm sure he is, yeah.
I mean,
sorry, Charlie.
Yeah. It's not like he's sitting at home doing nothing. He's still doing the wipe, I take it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And probably working on the next season of Black Mirror.
Yeah, I hope so.
So, yeah. Don't be too mean to Charlie. We like him very much.
But yeah, so the other thing was that I just recently have also finished Soma. And Soma is another one of these games that there's not a lot of action. You walk around and pick up stuff and interact with stuff, but it's all story driven, and it's creepy, and it's got really dark horror elements to it. But these are just great examples of how it's not really about the game anymore, or it doesn't have to always be about the game. The story, and just making it believable and making it real. Like, if you can make listening to a radio and then, like, giving you instructions to go to this page to look at pictures and translate the code, and that feels like fun. Like, if you can do all these things to make things real, that's the magic. That's where it all comes from. And yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Delete all that.
Stories Untold. I liked it. I would definitely play chapter 1 to 3 again. I would like to see another season, but it wouldn't have to follow the same story. In fact, I think it'd be wise if they made it Stories Untold Season 2 a totally completely different story.
I agree. I would buy it. And I wouldn't wait for it to be on a 99% sale this time. Because, I mean, like you said, the base is $10. Like, if they can charge that, and that was their business model, like, we need to charge $10 to make our money back, Yeah, that's great. That's a great value. Like, now that I know what they can do, I'm sitting up and paying attention now to no code. So the next game that they release, if the price is right, I'll be all over it. Gaps filled or more gaps created.